Okay, we are back in session. And would surely love to hear what staff's got to say.
Chairman, thank you. So staff has discussed Member Chapman's last slight change from his original, and we think that maybe this is the best approach. And Member Chapman, I'll read this, and for you, the chairman, and the rest of the board, see if this will, I think this will agree with where you were headed. Contributing to the accident was the pilot's likely self-induced pressure and the pilot's continuation bias, which adversely affected his decision-making, and Island Express Helicopter's inadequate review and oversight of the safety management process. And I'll add to that while it would be staff's preference not to qualify the self-induced pressure over the continuation bias, we fully respect the board's position on this, so we think this is the best solution for the direction that we're heading. And I would also say that it's not the case that the findings are supporting our analysis and proposal for the probable cause. They're not always the exact translation. So I think this is consistent with the finding that the board just adopted, but it may also hopefully meet your needs, Member Chapman. So that's what staff would offer.
Okay, you may have possibly left out the word plan when you read it, but I know that you for planned continuation bias. But
yes.
So basically, it's back to Member Chapman's original amendment that he verbally read. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe that's the case, but we might ask Member Chapman to read it again, because his original amendment used the word possible, but I think his verbal amendment was to insert likely instead of possible.
That's correct. Go ahead, Member Chapman,
That's
please.
correct, Mr. Chairman. And I think what I heard was the amendment as I read it verbally, but I'm happy to read it again.
Yes, and would it strike his and replace with insert the pilots? Is that correct?
I had suggested that, but I'm agnostic on that and would defer to staff.
Staff would support that.
All right. I'd like for Member Chapman to please restate his motion, and then we'll see. So if we need to discuss it further, but Member Chapman, please state your motion.
Here's my proposed amendment, Mr. Chairman. The National Transportation Safety Board determines that the probable cause of this accident was the pilot's decision to continue flight under visual flight rules into instrument meteorological conditions, which resulted in the pilot's spatial disorientation and loss of control. Contributing to the accident was the pilot's likely self-induced pressure and the pilot's planned continuation bias, which adversely affected his decision-making, and Island Express Helicopter's inadequate review and oversight of its safety management processes.
All righty, and I think you read over Island Express Helicopter Inc.'s inadequate review, but that's what you want, I think.
Yes, correct.
All right, it's been moved. I believe Member Hamidi seconded it. Is there any further discussion on this one? Okay, seeing none, we're now going to take a roll call vote. Vice Chairman Landsberg, you've heard the motion. What is your vote, sir?
I have, Mr. Chairman, and I vote aye to support the amendment.
Thank you very much. Vice Chairman votes aye. Member Hamidi.
Aye.
Member Hamidi votes aye. Member Graham.
I vote aye.
Member Graham votes aye. Member Chapman.
Aye.
Member Chapman votes aye. The chairman votes aye. The motion has been passed unanimously. The probable cause has been adopted. Mr. Curtis, if you'll please read the proposed recommendations.
Certainly, Chairman. As a result of this investigation,
Staff proposes the following 4 new safety recommendations. 2 to the Federal Aviation Administration. Number 1, require the use of appropriate simulation devices during initial and recurrent pilot training for Title 14 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 135, Helicopter Operations, to provide scenario-based training that addresses the decision-making, skills, and procedures needed to recognize and respond to changing weather conditions in flight. Identify and apply mitigation strategies for avoiding adverse weather. Practice the transition to the use of flight instruments to reduce the risk of spatial disorientation, and maintain awareness of a variety of influences that can adversely affect pilot decision-making. Number 2, convene a multidisciplinary panel of aircraft performance, human factors, and aircraft operations specialists to evaluate spatial disorientation simulation technologies to determine which applications are most effective for training pilots to recognize the onset of spatial disorientation and successfully mitigate it, and make public a report on the committee's findings. And 2, to Island Express Helicopters, Inc. Number 3, participate in the Federal Aviation Administration's Safety Management System Voluntary Program. And number 4, install flight data recording devices capable of supporting a flight data monitoring, FDM, program on each helicopter in your fleet, and establish an FDM program that reviews all available data resources to identify deviations from established norms and procedures, as well as other potential safety issues. There are 3 previously issued recommendations reiterated in this report. 2 to the Federal Aviation Administration, A1635, which reads, after the action and safety recommendation A1634 is completed, require all 14 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 135 operators to establish a structured flight data monitoring program that reviews all available data sources to identify deviations from established norms and procedures and other potential safety issues. And A1636, require all 14 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 135 operators to establish safety management system programs. And 1 to Airbus Helicopters, Bell, Leonardo Helicopter Division, MD Helicopters, Robinson Helicopter Company, and Sikorsky, a Lockheed Martin company, which is A2029, provide on your existing turbine-powered helicopters that are not equipped with a flight data recorder or a cockpit voice recorder, a means to install a crash-resistant flight recorder system that records cockpit audio and images with a view of the cockpit environment to include as much of the outside view as possible and parametric data per aircraft and system installation, all as specified in Technical Standard Order C-197, Information Collection and Monitoring Systems. The recorder system installation should be considered essential equipment that remains installed for the life of the helicopter and have provisions to ensure it remains operational during each flight. There are 2 recommendations classified and reiterated in this report, both to the Federal Aviation Administration. First, A1634, require all 14 Code of Federal Regulations, Part 135 operators to install flight data recording devices capable of supporting a flight data monitoring program. This recommendation is classified open, unacceptable response. And secondly, A1313, require all existing turbine-powered, non-experimental, non-restricted category aircraft that are not equipped with a flight data recorder or cockpit voice recorder and are operating under 14 Code of Federal Regulations, Parts 91, 121, or 135 to be retrofitted with a crash-resistant flight recorder system. The crash-resistant flight recorder system should record cockpit audio and images with a view of the cockpit environment to include as much of the outside view as possible, and parametric data per aircraft and system installation, all as specified in Technical Standard Order C-197, Information Collection and Monitoring Systems. This recommendation is classified open, unacceptable response. Chairman?
Okay, Mr. Curtis, thank you very much. Is there a motion to adopt the recommendations as presented?
I so
Okay, Member Chapman, I hear you as moving that, and is there a second?
Second.
Member Hamady has seconded. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the recommendations as presented. Is there any discussion? I should say, yes, I'm sorry, I didn't ask if there were any amendments, but I don't see any proposed amendments. It's been moved and seconded to adopt the recommendations as presented. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to a roll call vote. Vice Chairman Landsberg.
Vice Chairman votes aye.
Vice Chairman votes aye. Member Hamady.
Aye.
Member Hamady votes aye. Member Graham.
aye.
Member Graham votes aye. Member Chapman.
Aye.
Member Chapman votes aye. Chairman votes aye. The safety recommendations have been adopted as presented. We now turn to that point in the report where we would adopt the final report. However, I believe that Member Hamady may have an amendment or two for the report itself, the main body of the report.
Yeah, I have one amendment, and it's the second amendment that I circulated yesterday, amending page 18. I suggest adding it to the end of line 5 or 6, but I'd like to offer this amendment with the allowance for staff to determine where in this section is the best place to put it based on their decision making. So my amendment is to add the accident helicopter was initially equipped with a Fairchild A100 cockpit voice recorder when it was delivered from Sikorsky to the initial operator. It was subsequently removed by Island Express as permitted by FAA regulation. I have regulations, take off the S, comma, during the interior modifications.
Okay, there's Member Hamady's motion. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been seconded by Member Graham. Member Hamady, I recognize you.
Thank you. This is the factual part of the report, and I think since we are emphasizing the importance of CVRs, I wanted to make sure that I highlighted something that was also actually pointed out by Sikorsky in a submission to NTSB as part of this accident investigation, which notified us that the accident helicopter had been initially manufactured with the cockpit voice recorder inside, but that had been removed by Island Express when they modified the helicopter to accommodate more passengers. You're on mute.
Any comments, questions, discussion from the board before we turn to staff's comments? Okay, seeing none, we'd like to get the position of our staff, please.
Thank you,
Staff
Chairman.
concurs. Oh, sorry.
Right.
Yes, staff concurs, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I heard Mr. English say staff concurs, and Dana, I think you were speaking as well, Ms. Schultz.
Yes, Chairman. It's factual information that's factually accurate, so we support this.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. It's been moved and seconded to adopt. Yes, sir, Michael Graham.
Yeah, and I just want to say I support this because I think it just goes in line with our recommendation A20-29 also, which reads at the end and reminds you again, the recorder system installation should be considered essential equipment that remains installed for the life of the helicopter. I think this just goes in hand with that, so I would support it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a good addition, and we don't know why Island Express removed it. Do we, Mr. English?
Yes, we do. It was March 16th of 2016.
Yeah, the question is, why did they remove it?
Oh, why? It's when they're not required by regulations, operators typically remove them as weight and maintenance savings.
And when the previous owner had the helicopter, there were actually two previous owners before Island Express having it. They kept it in. Is that correct?
Yeah, yes. For most operations, it would have not been necessary after the installation of the SPZ 7000 autopilot, but the previous operators did leave it in.
Yeah, so two previous operators left it in. Island Express took it out. Okay, any other discussion? Thank you. It's been moved and seconded to adopt Member Hamody's language, addition to the language in the report to be inserted at the appropriate place in the report. No further discussion? Seeing no further discussion, we'll proceed to the vote. Member Landsberg, Vice Chairman Landsberg.
Vice Chairman votes aye.
Vice Chairman Landsberg votes aye. Member Hamody.
Aye.
Member Hamody votes aye. Member Graham.
Aye.
Member Graham votes aye. Member Chapman.
Aye.
Member Chapman votes aye. The chairman votes aye. The motion carries unanimously. Are there any other issues related to this report that our board members would like to discuss? Okay, do I have a motion to adopt the report as revised?
So moved.
Vice Chairman moves. Is there a second?
Second.
Member Chapman seconds. Any further discussion? It's been moved and seconded to adopt the report as revised. No further discussion. So Vice Chairman Landsberg, your vote is?
Aye.
Vice Chairman votes aye. Member Hamody.
Aye.
Member Hamody votes aye. Member Graham.
Aye.
Member Graham votes aye. Member Chapman.
Aye.
Member Chapman votes aye. The chairman votes aye. The report has been adopted as revised unanimously. Do any of my colleagues wish the right to file a concurring or dissenting statement?
I reserve the right.
I will reserve the right as well. As we prepare to wrap up the meeting, those participating in the board meeting may feel free to turn off their cameras and mics. In closing, I want to thank my colleagues on the board for their preparation going into the board meeting and for the good discussion and the good debate. My special thanks to Member Hamody, who is the board member on scene, and to Member Chapman, who as a new board member at the time, he launched to this accident in his training capacity. Thanks to the investigative staff of the Office of Aviation Safety, as well as that of the Office of Research of Engineering. But I always say that nothing at the board gets done with just one person. It truly is a group effort and a sincere effort, a sincere thank you, not only to those who worked on the investigation, but to the program and the support staff members, and certainly to those who worked on the report, program and staff who helped bring this board meeting together, and to our IT staff and managing director staff and AD staff to pull it all together for a board meeting. The recommendations that we issued today, the newly issued recommendations, if acted upon, will strengthen aeronautical decision-making skills related to weather for Part 135 helicopter pilots, and it would result in research on spatial disorientation simulator training devices. The recommendations that we reiterated and those that we reclassified and reiterated, if acted upon, would result in safety management systems and flight data monitoring throughout the Part 135 aviation community, including installation of devices that would make flight data monitoring programs possible. And they would also result, these recommendations would also result in crash-hardened recorders with inward and outward facing image recorders on board most flights, including on-demand Part 135 flights. Action on the recommendations issued today will move us forward now. Action on the reiterated recommendations is long overdue. We stand adjourned.